Hi, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. We're at No Brand Con 007. You can add in your own James Bond theme there. In 2008, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and right now this segment is about indie games. So, since this was the gentleman in the back's idea to start with, why don't we let him get going? Brian, the floor is yours, and the mic too.
Right. Well, I don't know, I guess indie games is a fairly new development for me as far as role-playing. I started in middle school, and I mainly played D&D up through, and I heard about some other systems, but then I started going online, looking at forums, and I saw that, wow, there's a lot of other games out there. There's so many different ways to actually do role-playing besides what I heard of before.
Okay.
And some of them are very, very different, like Primetime Adventures or like My Life with Master, some really weird ones out there.
PTA is a great game. I like Primetime
Adventures
a lot.
But I'm wondering just what people's thoughts about those really alternative games are, which really often, like Wushu, which define. Have you heard of that?
Wushu?
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it. I've read Roanoke, which is a supplement for it, which brings Wushu in line with the destruction of the Roanoke colony, which is an odd combination in my opinion. Weird.
But it's really, like those kind of games often there's not really a person who runs the game. It's often a more collaborative approach to storytelling.
GM-less gaming.
Yeah, that's an idea that many people have not tried and somewhat unfamiliar with. And I'm just wondering what people's thoughts, how much they know about it.
Well, I can start with the idea of GM-less gaming, and my prejudices are really going to show here, and I apologize for that in advance. I have a problem with GM-less gaming for a couple of reasons. One, the experiences that I have had with it and the players that I have heard of who like it, it's usually very whiny and you didn't let me empower myself to the level that I thought I should. It's like, here, show me on the doll where the GM touched your character. It's kind of the feeling I get out of it from them. I don't like it for the second reason is I'm a game master and I like to have that level of control. I do like it though when players do step up and try to take. I've had games where my players have tried to derail everything. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it works out for the best, and what they come up with is, well, crap, it's better than what I had in mind. And at other times I've had groups that just sit there and stare at me, wanting me to, as a friend of mine put it recently, feed them a fantasy novel. Like, can you just feed us this novel and just let us sit here and listen to it? Well, no, I can't. So I'm sort of two minds on GM-less gaming. I do like player empowerment, though.
Yeah, I was going to.
I don't mind player empowerment,
especially since like the way D&D had sort of grown up. Most people, that's the majority of what people start on, especially in the early days, where like with Tome of Horror, where the DM crushes you if you do something just minorly wrong, things like that.
Tomb of Horrors. Do you know the story behind the Tomb of Horrors?
Yeah.
Everyone's complaining Gygax's dungeons were too easy, so he made this one dungeon that was just doom. Like, you turn the wrong corner, save versus death, your character's a greasy smear on the floor. And then everyone's like, oh, this one's too hard. It very much reminds me of the Tigger syndrome, where Tiggers like everything but whatever you're giving them. They like everything but acorns, and they like everything but honey and acorns. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm rambling again, but I see where you're going with that.
But because of that, a lot of players don't expect to have much control over even their character or even the world around them. They don't get to decide, like, oh, there happens to be a box here I can jump on, even though it makes perfect sense for the setting, but the DM didn't make it up, so it can't be there. Whereas I think having a little more control over the game, where, yeah, the DM is maybe the top, says yes or no for sure, but they should usually say yes if it makes sense.
Yeah. I think a lot of games these days, I know games I'm running, if you want something there that doesn't critically break the plot, sure. You know, for example, is there a box I can jump on? Yes. Does that box contain a phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range? Probably not. That's where you need to start spending drama or plot points or supplications, bribes to the game master, that sort of thing. Indie games that I like, I'm a big Fate fan. Fate, which is Fate 3.0, it's currently in Spirit of the Century.
Was that originally based on Fudge?
It was a Fudge derivative. It's also what's powering the new Dresden game when that hits. So that will be, that's pretty good.
I've heard a lot of good things about like Spirit of the Century and stuff. What do you think about that?
Spirit of the Century, I like Spirit of the Century. My only problem with Fate, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, I'm just going to say that up front, is it's a little too squishy for me. For example, you brought it up yourself. Most of us grew up playing D&D. I spent, of my 29 years, probably 20 years of that, maybe a little less, playing Dungeons & Dragons. My second love after D&D was Call of Cthulhu, and that's what really changed my life in terms of what role-playing is. It was just a different approach to the entire game. So, yes, I like Spirit of the Century. It's a good game. It's squishy in that, one, things aren't really well defined for me. I need a bit more definition in how things work and what ideas are there.
Do you think we need indie games that are more crunchy, so to speak? I mean, most of them are really, as you say, squishy. They're very light, they're very fluffy. You get to sort of define things on your own.
I think we need all of them because we have such a broad distribution of players and what they want in Game Masters. I think if we just had one game, everything would implode. I really do. I think that I think we need all those. Like, I'm not terribly comfortable with GM-less gaming. I think we established that. But there are people who are great. I'm not going to tell you no. The bad, wrong, fun police are not going to come to your house and beat on you with a stick saying you can't play this. I'm not going to be that person. I mean, if you want to do something completely zany, as long as the group is having fun and they're not scaring the straights, I don't care what you do. So you have something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of the indie games really have a chance to push the envelope, and they are so fluffy often because of budget concerns or just like they don't have the massive production facility machine that is Wizards of the Coast to grind out every little detail. And I have another friend, another GM who likes to write games, and he's really into the open fluffy thing. But I think it has a chance to really push the envelope of role playing, and then other people can decide that maybe that's a good direction to take for more crunchy, for what maybe we prefer, a little bit more defined atmosphere, and then they can take that and define it more, distill it, and put it into something else. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, we need all of those to explore new horizons and stuff. Otherwise, you end up being static, and then that sucks.
No, like I'm a big Unisystem fan, and I will run that to the exclusion of anything else. Unisystem empowers Witchcraft, Armageddon, Terra Primate, All Flesh Must Be Eaten, Buffy, Angel, Army of Darkness. It's basically one game that does all of that. And like I said, I grew up on D&D. I really cut my teeth on Call of Cthulhu, but I really found my niche with Unisystem. I'm getting kind of tired of it. I've run it pretty exclusively for the past 6 years. Every now and then, let's do a Cthulhu game for 2 or 3 weeks, and we're back to Unisystem. So it's why this summer, when I'm launching a new game, I'm going to do something other than Unisystem for the sole purpose of giving me a little diversity. As I've been telling people, we've had a lot of fun. I almost feel like Unisystem and I need a little time away from each other just to get a little break and maybe appreciate each other a little bit more.
I had a similar experience with... I played mainly D&D, but I have played like a little White Wolf in the past, but really not too much. And I never actually ran it. I've only run D&D up to the point where one winter break, I had a couple weeks, and I went on a limb. There was like a sale. I got myself the new edition of World of Darkness core book, where you can just play regular people. I like to run a game of that, just a short 3-session game of modern creepy horror. See how I would do horror, because I've never run horror before. At that point, and I wanted to see how it was done, and that really gave me a new perspective on how I can run games, how to push myself further, and I think a lot of people really should try that.
Okay. Get outside your comfort envelope.
Yeah, because it really, even trying something, even if it completely bombs, it gives you some insight into what you are good at, what you're bad at, what your players like, what you don't, things like that. And I think indie games really help you do that by giving you options.
Okay.
To push yourself in new directions.
You don't realize how constrained you are until you really actually go out and try those things. I too had only done D&D, and then finally I started trying a few other systems, and it was, they have a completely different take on it, and it just broadens your horizons.
Any other thoughts about indie games, alternate settings? Alternate engines, different ways to do things? All right. We'll just call that segment an end. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.